Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's ACECRT Financial Wellness Webinar Series, where we'll be discussing Social Security and Medicare. We appreciate all of you taking the time to join us today. A few items to go over before we get started. First, in order to ensure everyone has the ability to hear the information presented by our guest speaker, everyone will be on mute during the webinar. Second, please feel free to write in any questions you have using the Q&A tool on the webinar menu. At the end, we will take some time to go through these. Now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Michael Gracie. Mr. Gracie is a value add and retirement education specialist for BlackRock. He is responsible for the development and delivery of the firm's wealth management programs. He has many years of experience as a public speaker, representing BlackRock as a specialist in the retirement sector. Prior to his current role, Michael was a defined contribution advisor consultant managing 401k distribution relationships, including plan design consulting and compliance administration. Thank you so much for being here today, Michael, and now I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, and good afternoon. And thank you for calling in here at your lunchtime to talk about Social Security and Medicare. I appreciate you're here. Kind of getting us started today, one of the things as we approach the retirement, especially for baby boomers where that decision is a little more closer than some of the others maybe on the call, is that planning for Social Security or making decisions about our Social Security benefits may be one of the most important decisions we're ever going to make in retirement. And many times these decisions are really irrevocable, so it's kind of important that we get them right the first time. And as part of our planning for retirement, there's certain risk factors that we typically kind of need to think about. Many times when you think about investing for retirement, market volatility is a typical risk that you think about. But the risk I'd like to spend a little time talking about is something that most people don't consider. And it's really important. And we call it longevity risk. And it deals with your life expectancy. And it turns out life expectancy is something a lot of people don't consider, but it's really critical, and here's why. What we have here are the results of a longevity or actuarial study, and what it basically kind of says there at the bottom is if a couple lives to reach retirement, you've gotten all your youthful, reckless behavior out of the way, and you make it to retirement. Well, there's a high probability that one in that couple is going to live well into their 90s. Okay, so even though people are living longer than ever before, clearly there's a disconnect between longevity risk and what's happening out there. In fact, Social Security tells us almost 2/3 of us elect to take our Social Security benefits early. And when you do, they reduce what you're going to get. So let me come back to this longevity risk again, but let's spend a little bit of time talking about how they actually calculate your Social Security. To be eligible for a benefit on your own work record, a worker needs to have earned 40 credits or 40 quarters. You may have heard that before. Since there are 4 quarters per year, it means you got to work at least 10 years to be eligible for a benefit on your own work record. And many people think their Social Security benefits are based on 10 years. But the reality is they're going to base your Social Security on the 35 highest paid years of your career. Again, not 35 consecutive years, but the best overall 35. Now, what you see up here on the screen, this is a copy of a Social Security statement. Your statement will show you your earnings history, and it's also going to show you estimated benefits. Benefits when you turn 62, later at what is called your full retirement age, or if you wait out until 70 to start. Now, the thing about these statements is, you used to get them in the mail a couple months prior to your birthday. But now they're only sending these statements out to us every 5 years. 25, you're 30, you're 35, etc. You'll get a statement. And when you turn 60, you should get a statement each year until you retire. But there is another option. Today, you can also go out to Social Security's website, create an account, log in an ID, and you'll be able to download a copy of a statement that is updated each and every year. And I'd encourage you, go out, get your Social Security statement, and get it updated each year. All right. Enough about calculating Social Security. Let's talk about collecting. I think we all know you can start Social Security, although they're going to reduce those benefits as early as age 62. Full benefits come if you wait until what is called your full retirement age, and they'll actually increase your benefits if you delay them up until you reach age 70. Now, your benefit at your full retirement age, it has another name. It's called your primary insurance amount, or your PIA. You're going to hear me talk a lot about PIA. It is your benefit at your full retirement age, but it's also the key number that all benefits are based off of, reductions and increases. And it's a number you may want to share with your financial advisor to do some projections for you around those benefits. Your full retirement age, though, has been a little bit of a moving target. Used to be age 65, but back in the 80s, 1983, they passed a law to change our full retirement ages. They moved it from 65 up to age 67. But they did this in a grandfathered fashion. And the way it works is like this. For baby boomers born 1943 to 1954, their full retirement age is your 66th birthday. Anybody who's born 1960 or later, though, your full retirement age is your 67th birthday. And if you were lucky enough to have been born between 1955 and 1959, well, you have to calculate your full retirement age. Start at your 66th birthday and then add 2 months for every year your birth falls after 1954. I don't know why they had to make it that complicated, but unfortunately, they did. All right, you start your Social Security early, prior to hitting that magical full retirement age, and they're going to reduce what you get. And they use a monthly formula to determine the amount of the benefit reduction. Now, the output of the formula is right here. If you wait till your full retirement age, you see in the right, you're going to get 100% of your PIA. But for every month or year you start the benefit early, the formula reduces what you get. And note, if you're starting at 62, you're only going to receive 75% of your PIA. They're going to reduce it by 25%. Now, the thing about this, these benefit reductions are permanent. So, before you take your Social Security, there's a couple of key concepts you really should ask yourself, or questions, before you take your benefits. And we've broken them into a few categories here. First category, working. Are you actually going to retire? Or is there a chance that you might work, and many of us do, even part-time, prior to your full retirement age? Then you got to look at longevity again. How's your health? Is it good? Is it not so good? Your health, probably one of the most important factors to look at before you take your benefits. And then lastly, our most important section. Are you married? Is there an age difference between you and your spouse? Whose benefit can the spouse collect? So, looking at these categories of questions, let's dig down a little deeper. But let's start with working during retirement. Let's say you want to take your Social Security early, prior to your full retirement age, but you continue to work. You need to know there's an earnings limit test. It's probably going to impact your benefit. Now, you see, they call it an earnings limit, but all they really care about are your wages or earned income. They don't care about your investment income. They don't look at your pensions or your IRAs or 401ks. They just look at your wages. And if I start my Social Security early this year, and I have wages greater than $15,720, they're going to begin to withhold my benefits. $1 of benefits withheld for every $2 of my wages above that limit. Now, this first wage formula, it's going to hold true between 62, and I'm collecting my Social Security up until the calendar year I reach my full retirement age, where my wage limit increases to almost $42,000 before they begin to withhold benefits. When I get to my full retirement age, the earnings limit test goes away. So think about it. If you're going to continue to work, it's probably going to make sense to hold off collecting your Social Security at least until you hit your full retirement age. Okay. Want to talk about another monthly formula. This is the formula that's going to increase your Social Security between your full retirement age and 70. What you need to know about it is the interest rate. The interest rate that they use to increase those benefits is a factor of 8% per year, called delayed retirement credits. Now, if I wait until I'm 70, delaying my benefits, I'm going to receive 132% of my PIA. But you see that goes down for each and every year. And if I start at 62, I'm only going to receive 75% of my PIA, a wide range to possible benefits. What do? Well, for a number of years, when people try to think about when to take Social Security, there's a pretty common approach to collecting these benefits. It's an approach called a break-even analysis. And the way the break-even analysis looks like is here on this slide. So it basically says, hey, if I'm going to take my Social Security early and they're going to reduce it by 25% versus waiting 4 whole years to get my full benefits or waiting until 70, well, how long must I live to catch up, right? Now, the math to break even is pretty simple. It says you got to live to you're about 78. You want to wait until your full retirement age, or 82 and a half if you want to wait out until 70. Now, there's a lot of studies out there that talk about baby boomers living a lot longer than 82 and a half. But that's really not the problem with this break-even approach. The problem is that it doesn't work very well, especially if you're married. You see, married couples, they get 2 other benefits that single people don't get. And those are spousal benefits and survivor benefits. So we're going to talk about those next, and kind of the way we do this is through a kind of a test case. So we have our sample clients up here. You see Jordan and Alex. Let me tell you a little bit about Jordan and Alex. First thing I want you to know is they're the same age. And Jordan, you see, he's got a pretty good PIA. But Alex, we're going to take an extreme example first. We're going to assume Alex's PIA is 0. Now, even though Alex has no PIA of his or her own, still entitled to a benefit, a spousal benefit. Now, the maximum spousal benefit is equal to 50% of, in this case, Jordan's PIA, or $1,100 a month. Now, in order for Alex to collect the spousal benefit off of Jordan's work record, Jordan has to do something first. He or she is required to file for Social Security. Now, we know you can file for benefits as early as age 62. And if Jordan files at 62, Alex can begin to collect the spousal benefit, since they're the same age in our illustration, but Jordan is going to be forced to collect his or her own Social Security. And those benefits get reduced because he or she filed early. Now, if Jordan was born on or before April 30th, 1950, Jordan has some additional options. At full retirement age, Jordan can file but suspend his or her own Social Security, allowing it to earn delayed credits until 70, where Jordan can begin to collect a benefit that is 32% higher than his PIA. Okay? The whole time, though, Alex is collecting the spousal benefit at the point Jordan filed. This is referred to as a file and suspend strategy. And about a week ago, when Congress passed and President Obama signed the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2015, the ability to file and suspend, do this second part, was eliminated under the law. However, it was grandfathered. So Jordan can put a file and suspend strategy if he or she was born on or before April 30th of 1950. However, Jordan must put the file and suspend into play before April 29th of 2016. So there's approximately 6 months left in order to put a file and suspend strategy into place. For the rest of us on the call, those of us who were born after April 30th, 1950, when we file for benefits, we will be forced to collect our Social Security. And in order for a spouse to collect a benefit on our work record, we will have to file and collect, whether we do it at 62, full retirement, or waiting out until 70 to start. Significant change to the rule, but recognizing there are some grandfathers. And lastly, if you were born on or before April 30th, 1950, I'd really like you to spend some time, talk to a financial advisor about your options under this important Social Security provision. The 1100 there that you see for Alex's spousal benefit, that's the maximum, 50% of Jordan's PIA. But what Alex is really going to receive on that benefit depends upon another factor. And that factor is Alex's age at the time he or she begins to collect. If Alex has reached his or her own full retirement age, going to receive 100% of any spousal benefit. But if Alex is younger, they have a spousal reduction formula too. And if you look over there at 62, you see it's actually a greater penalty, looking at a 30% reduction to any spousal benefits. And unfortunately, it won't give you any delayed retirement credits to increase the spousal benefit. It stays capped at 50% of the higher spouse's PIA. Now, where you can really kind of see this come into play is what happens if both Jordan and Alex have benefits of their own. So you see here in this case, Alex's PIA is now $600 a month, not $0. If Alex waits until he or she reaches their own full retirement age, he's going to collect 100%, the full $600. Take it early, you see they're going to reduce the green piece by 25%. And if they wait, Alex could earn his or her own delayed credits. But in that middle column, you see that 50% of Jordan's PIA was $1,100 a month. So from that number, you subtract Alex's PIA, and the difference is the spousal benefit. See how it bridges the gap between Alex's PIA and 50% of Jordan's. However, you can see a more dramatic reduction to the blue piece starting at 62 and subject to that spousal cap if they wait past full retirement age. It's important to kind of recognize that for some couples, one spouse may collect a benefit that's based on a combination of their work records. I want to kind of switch gears. I want to talk a little bit about survivor benefit. A widower, right, collecting survivor benefits, here's what's important to know. One statistic that is clear is that female life expectancy is greater than male life expectancy. And in fact, there was a statistic in the 2010 U.S. Census that said the average widow outlived her husband by about 14 years. So when you think about this, if Jordan has greater benefits, but Alex lives longer, and Jordan takes Social Security benefits early, and his or her benefits get reduced as a result, what happens is the survivor benefit available to Alex after Jordan is gone is subject to a reduction. However, if Jordan can earn delayed credits to increase his or her own Social Security, Alex is able to capture those delayed credits in the survivor benefit on the back end. So you see, it's this quirk or rule around survivor benefits is what changes break-even for married couples. And that's why we say if you're married, you really need to sit down with a financial advisor and check out the impact of survivor benefits on your Social Security. And that's kind of what we're going to do next. I'm going to show you how Jordan and Alex's benefits would be based if they collect them at different age points. So our first strategy here is what happens if our couple wants to collect Social Security as early as possible, 62. And also you can see there, we're showing you a pretty conservative life expectancy. Jordan living only until he's 75, but Alex living a few more years, 7 more years in fact, until she's 82. This is what it would look like. Jordan files at 62. That 2200 PIA drops down to $1,650 a month. Alex also files at 62. The $600 PIA comes down to $450 a month, and the $500 spousal adjustment Alex was entitled to becomes $350 a month. Now, if our couple collects those benefits from 62 until Jordan passes away, what they'll receive is at the bottom of the columns here. $277 for Jordan, $75,000 for Alex, plus $59,000 more in survivor benefits. When our couple turns 75 and Jordan passes away, all of those monthly benefits go away. But Alex is entitled to receive a survivor benefit for the rest of her life. They look at Jordan's PIA, the 2200, but since he started Social Security at 62, they're going to apply a survivor reduction formula. You're not going to see the amount here on our slide, but it turns out Alex would receive $1,815 a month, or for 7 years, $152,000. So we can calculate for our clients, and a financial advisor can calculate for you exactly what you're going to get from Social Security. And for our couple here, turns out to be a little over $564,000 in total benefits. Now, here's what's interesting. If Jordan and Alex both waited 4 whole years to hit their full retirement age before starting Social Security, they get full benefits without any reduction. And Alex would receive $2,200 as her survivor benefit. And if you note at the bottom, even though they waited 4 years, they actually got more in benefits. The reduction formulas for taking the benefits early were a greater penalty than waiting. Now, pushing this out until 70, even though the couple's earning delayed credit, with this life expectancy, it's just too short for them to wait all the way until 70 to start collecting. It turns out to be our worst scenario. But what I wanted to kind of introduce to you today or show you is how utilizing that file and suspend strategy for a few of us here on the call today could actually benefit. So what would be the best strategy for Alex and Jordan is for Alex to take her Social Security early at 62. Even though the benefit gets reduced to $450, she starts collecting at that point. At full retirement age, Jordan would file but suspend that benefit, which would entitle Alex to collect the $500 spousal piece. At 70, Jordan would file for his own Social Security. The $2,200 goes all the way up to $2,904 a month, and that's what he would receive for the rest of his life. In addition, at $2,904, it would become Alex's survivor benefit after Jordan was gone. This strategy really maximized Social Security for our couple. Now, here's the change from the Bipartisan Budget Act that passed last week. In order for Alex to collect that spousal benefit, Jordan has to file and collect. If, though, Jordan was born before April 30th of 1950, he would be grandfathered to put that file and suspend into place. But he needs to file and suspend his benefits before April 29th of 2016. So there is a limited window here to put that file and suspend into place. For any of us younger, again, we would need to file and collect our benefits in order for our spouse to receive a spousal benefit on our work record. What it changes here for those of us who are younger is probably deeming a collection point or an optimized collection point somewhere between our full retirement age and 70. And again, it's important to kind of do that analysis. All right. Greater benefits, before I get to greater benefits, changing the life expectancy has a huge impact in what we receive from Social Security. If we change our life expectancy for Jordan and Alex, give them 10 more years together in retirement, the difference between starting at 62 versus that full retirement age or even waiting until 70 is significantly different, almost 200,000 to the amount of benefits that can be collected. So that's where health and longevity play a huge factor in what you collect. And once again, it's really important to model those given scenarios. Here is greater benefits for a couple and a unique strategy that is possible for anyone who turns 62 prior to the end of this year. For those of us who don't reach 62, this option goes away, but for those of us who do, it is grandfathered for our full retirement age. What it allows us to do here for Alex is when Jordan files for Social Security, and if Alex is at full retirement age, Alex would have the option: collect his or her own $1,400 PIA or collect the spousal benefit, the $1,100. If Alex collects the spousal benefit, he or she could defer her own Social Security up to 4 more years, earning delayed credits until 70, where they would step up, move from a spousal benefit of $1,100 up to her own benefit of $1,848. This is called a restricted election, starting with your spousal benefit, moving to your own benefit later. This was also changed under the Bipartisan Budget Act, but anyone who turns 62 before the end of this year has been grandfathered and can put a restricted election in place when they reach their full retirement age. If you're 62 today or will be before the end of this year, this is an important benefit option that you need to know that you have access to. Survivor benefits had no change as a result of the Bipartisan Act, and the survivor benefits as before continuing to the future. And one of the key options is that a widow or widower can take a survivor benefit as early as age 60. Now, even though that survivor benefit is reduced if the widow takes the benefits early, the widow needs to know that they have their own PIA in reserve and can file for their own benefits later. Start with a survivor benefit, move to your own Social Security later. It's also possible for a widow or widower to take their own Social Security at 62 when they become eligible, but then defer the survivor benefit until full retirement age. Oftentimes, widows or widowers take what is the best benefit from day one without looking to see if a different combination of claiming may make better sense as part of a long-term plan. Social Security is also designed to protect us in the event we get divorced, but there are a couple of key things you need to know. A couple had to be married for at least 10 years. The spouse that wants to collect on the ex's work record has to be unmarried at the time they go to collect, and both spouses have to have reached that eligible age, 62. If a couple meets those requirements, an ex-spouse can collect a spousal benefit, but also potentially survivor benefits. And the amount of the benefits paid in divorce are exactly the same as the benefits paid to married couples. Absolutely no difference. It's also important to recognize that you can have multiple spouses or ex-spouses collecting a benefit on the same work record, as long as those spouses all met those eligibility requirements. Many times we see scenarios where individuals were divorced and not familiar with these rules, had no idea they were eligible to collect spousal or survivor benefits on ex's work records. And by not telling Social Security their life history, let's say, they weren't collecting all of the benefits they were entitled to receive. A very important component or feature of our Social Security program. Social Security benefits are also taxable. I think it's something we need to recognize, and they have a formula for determining how much. They're defining what is called your provisional income, and your provisional income will be 1/2 of your Social Security benefit added to your modified adjusted gross income. Modified adjusted gross is the adjusted gross income that you find in your tax return, but it gets increased by any tax-free income you might receive. An example might be if you invest in municipal bonds, that income is tax-free typically, but it's part of your modified adjusted gross. Also, if you start distributions from Roth IRAs or Roth 401k, that income is part of your modified adjusted gross as well. Married and filing jointly, if my provisional income is above $44,000, the table tells us that up to 85% of your Social Security benefits will be treated as income that's going to be subject to federal income taxes at whatever your tax rate is at the time you file. So, transitioning here, we're going to move from Social Security over to Medicare. And Medicare, we know, is a governmental insurance program that's there for all of us who are 65 and over. Medicare comes in 4 parts. Part A of Medicare is the part that covers our hospital insurance. Part B is our medical insurance, and Part D is an optional prescription drug program. Now, you can take traditional Medicare and wrap it with Part C, which is called a Medicare Advantage Plan. It combines traditional Medicare into kind of an HMO or a PPO kind of approach to our benefits. The other silo or option for us is to take our traditional Medicare and wrap it in a Medigap plan, a supplemental program that follows federal guidelines managed by the state and provided by private insurance carriers. So when you're going through your options of enrollment, you have to decide, am I going to use a traditional Medicare program with a Medigap structure, or am I going to elect Medicare Part C, the Advantage program for providing my benefits? However, one of the things we need to think about in retirement is what is our cost to health care outside of Medicare? And there are a number of specific gaps, or co-payments that we need to consider. And let's start with Medicare Part A, the part that covers your hospitals. Now, even though there are no premiums for Medicare Part A, especially if we have our 40 credits or quarters from Social Security, there are deductibles. And there is a deductible for hospitalization of 1 to 60 days that is $1,260 per occurrence or per hospitalization. If you're in a hospital longer, 61 to 90 days, there is a $315 per day copayment. Incredibly expensive deductibles and copays. And we have to recognize that if we are hospitalized, these deductibles are going to come out of our investable assets. So it's something we really need to recognize as part of our cost of health care. Another important cost of health care is something we're a little more familiar with, and that is the premiums associated for our Medicare Part B. Now, what you may not know about the premiums is they use a step schedule or cliff schedule. And all that means is if you have $1 of modified adjusted gross income, because that's what they look at, and it moves you to the next step in a premium ladder, it can have a pretty significant impact in your premiums. A one-step increase would increase a couple's Medicare Part B premiums between $1,100 and $1,400 per year. So it's important to analyze what your modified adjusted gross income is as your consideration as part of your Medicare premiums, right? And do any income models or modifications that you might be able to if you're close to one of those thresholds. Another important thing about Medicare Part B premiums is you probably heard in the last couple of weeks, they're expected to go up. And in fact, that Medicare Part B premium of $104.90 you see in the far left is going to increase probably to about $120 and some odd cents a month starting in 2016. However, an act that was passed a few years ago contained a provision that dealt in specific situations where there is no COLAs, cost of living adjustments to Social Security, which is occurring here in 2016. So if I am receiving or paying Medicare Part B premiums here in 2015, and my Social Security is not going to increase as a result of the COLA, my current premium will carry over into next year without increase. It's called a hold harmless provision. Now, in years to which there are COLAs and there are Medicare premium increases, the premium will be passed on to me. But recognize that this hold harmless provision somewhat protects those of us who might be at lower premium levels against future increases. Something to explore as well. Enrolling in Medicare adds a couple of other considerations. First to look at, if I'm collecting my Social Security benefit and I've reached 64 and 9 months of age, what happens? If I'm collecting, I am automatically going to be enrolled in Medicare Part A and Part B. If, however, I've delayed my Social Security, I need to or should consider applying for Medicare 3 months prior to reaching age 65. Now, Medicare Part B has 3 different enrollment periods. There's an initial enrollment period. It's a 7-month window, starting between 64 and 9 months, 65 and 3 months. If I am retired, I should apply for my Medicare Part B during this initial enrollment period. If, however, I fail to enroll during my initial period, there's a general enrollment period, the time frame of January 1st to March 31st that you see in the red box in the middle of the screen. If, however, I do enroll during a general period and should have enrolled during my initial period, there are going to be some premium surcharge penalties that may apply. There is another Medicare enrollment period on the right, a special enrollment period. And anytime I'm covered by my employer's healthcare plan, I can enroll in the special enrollment period within 8 months after I am separated or no longer covered by that employer's plan. Where the special enrollment period really comes into play is, what if I'm still working when I reach Medicare eligibility age and I'm covered by my employer's health care? Medicare becomes secondary to that employer plan. And though I should enroll in Medicare Part A, I want to delay my Medicare Part B until I am retired and no longer covered by my employer's plan. At that point, I enroll in Medicare Part B for my medical coverage. Medicare Part D, the optional prescription drug program, provides a wide variety of potential coverage options or tiers. And to select the appropriate coverage tier, you need to kind of look at 3 basic components. First, what is the cost of that tier? Premiums, deductibles, co-pays. Next, what drugs are covered? What are the rules for getting them? Are there any other specific limitations that a tier might apply to my benefits? And then lastly, what's the convenience of getting those options? So once you analyze those 3 basic components of a Part D tier, you can select which is the appropriate option for you. Again, recognizing that you have some choice based on what your specific needs are. Another component of choice to discover is these Medigap or supplemental policies to wrap around our traditional Medicare. These are kind of structured in an alphabet soup kind of approach. They're plans A through L, or I believe, or N, and they cover a wide range of deductibles, extended hospitalization, and co-insurance. Each of the plans offer a different variety of coverage percentages and have different costs associated with them. The most common Medigap plan is Plan F. Over 60% of subscribers use Plan F, and it does to cover deductibles and co-insurance and some of the excess charges you see in Part A and Part B. In selecting any Medigap plan for your health care, our advice to you is to shop around. Because one of the surveys that was done a few years ago looked at Medigap Plan F for a 65-year-old woman could cost anywhere between $869 to $5,295, a dramatic difference in premiums for the exact same coverage. So once again, it's important to shop these plans around among all of the approved carriers in your state to see what makes the appropriate sense for you. There are a number of resources here for you to consider utilizing. Out through the internet, you could Google SHIP Medicare in the state that you live in to figure out some of the options that are available and resources outside of the seminar today. You need to decide between original Medicare and a Medigap program potentially and that Medicare Advantage, that HMO and PPO approach. And do some income planning with your financial advisor to see what your premium impacts might be and look at the appropriate timetables for implementing your decisions. And at that point, I guess we're kind of going to wrap up our seminar today. I hope you found the information informative, and let's open it up to see what questions you might have.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. We appreciate you sharing your time and knowledge today with everyone. And as you mentioned, we'll now start addressing some of the questions that have been filtering in. Please remember that if you have any questions, you can submit them using the Q&A tool on the webinar menu. And as always, you can reach out to ACECRT's Financial Wellness Help Center for any additional information that you might need. And that information is posted here on the screen for you. Let's go ahead and go to our first question now. In your calculations to determine the crossover age, what rate of return did you use? In other words, how much did you estimate the Social Security payments would earn if they were invested? I would not be appropriate to use 0, but I've seen other crossover calculations that do just that.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And in the slides that you saw here today, because our objective was really to explain the concept of the claiming strategies, there is an assumption of no investment assumption to the assets and no COLA assumption to the assets. Now, when we run client scenarios in the real world, we actually do make assumptions for cost of living adjustments and make time value assumptions if appropriate. And it will change slightly where those break-even component pieces will fall. So I agree with you in your question. It is important to use a time value assumption and to use a COLA assumption. Now for COLA, one of the things you can look at is the average COLA for the last 10 years has been about 2%, increasing existing benefits. You could use that as a model. You could do something more conservative, or you can go the other way. As far as an investment assumption, well, that's a discussion you need to have with your financial advisor. Look at how you allocate your investments as you become a little bit more conservative as you're approaching retirement, and what an expected type of long-term return could be. Our models and tools that we use allow us the flexibility to do that, and we plug those numbers in after discussions with our clients. Great question.
Thank you, Michael. Our next question, who are John and Jane in the presentation?
Yeah, I apologize for that. I noticed that as we were kind of going through, picking that up. We've had our PowerPoint presentation here for a number of years, and we used to use John and Jane as our couple. And literally, just a couple of weeks ago, we changed our slides from John and Jane to a gender-neutral Jordan and Alex as a response to the Supreme Court's decision on the Defense of Marriage Act and the provision of these benefits to same-sex couples. So we tried to go from traditional male-female names to something that was a little more ambiguous, but I noticed, as you did on the slide, that we had the name John on the side and one of the slides and Jane at the bottom. So apologize for that technical snafu, and tip my hat to you for picking up on it.
Thank you, Michael. Our next question, what if female spouse collects at 63 and male was born June 20th of 1950? None of this applies for file and suspend?
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you just repeat that? You kind of faded out on that question.
Absolutely. The question is, what if female spouse collects at 63 and male was born June 20th, 1950? None of this applies for file and suspend?
Correct. If the birth date you gave me was after April 30th, 1950, if you're born after that date, you're not able to put a file and suspend strategy into place. You have to have been born before April 30th, 1950, and you have to elect to do your file and suspend before April 29th, 2016. So for those born before that date, they only have 6 months to select or enact a file and suspend strategy. The flip side is also true. If you make any election, and this was true in the previous law, prior to your full retirement age, you are filing and collecting your own benefit. Your own benefit always comes into play in part of that calculation, and recognizing any time you file and collect early, there's going to be a reduction in benefits.
Thank you, Michael. Our next question, it's a two-part question. If I wait until 70, does my wife have to wait? And this is 13 plus years younger. What are the implications?
Great question. With significant age differences, the answer is yes, they do have to wait. So if you have already reached 70 or your full retirement age, and your spouse is 13 years younger, that spouse is not going to be able to receive that spousal benefit until they reach eligibility age, at least age 62. Now, that generates a number of interesting scenarios, probably a little more complicated for our call here today, but you really need to evaluate what are the PIA and benefits both you and your spouse are entitled to receive to see whether or not you want to look to try to wait to collect your Social Security until later, earning those delayed retirement credits to generate greater survivor benefits for your spouse, or if your spouse has significantly high enough Social Security benefits of their own that you can look to collect your benefits almost as if you're single and not married. Adds a little more complexity with a significant age difference, but it's not something that a financial advisor with some Social Security experience can't help you generate the appropriate calculations.
Thank you, Michael. No more questions at this time, but we do have a request to go back to the file and suspend slide and to repeat the recent changes.
Sure. Okay, I can do that. Hopefully I can do that. So, the file and suspend rule is available today under current law and will go away as a result of the 2015 Bipartisan Budget Act. In order to put a file and suspend election in other words, filing for your own benefit, suspending collection until a later point, and the filing triggers the ability of the spouse to collect a spousal benefit on your work record, the worker who is filing and suspending has to have been born before April 30th, 1950, and has to enact that file and suspend election prior to April 29th, 2016. So, born in that prior to April 1950, making the election before April 16th of 2016. That's the important cutoff date. The other scenario, the restricted application, which allows you to collect a spousal benefit and defer your own Social Security benefits until later, requires that you were born or you reach age 62 before the end of 2015. Those are the two key cutoff dates for the changes under the Bipartisan Act.
Great. Thank you, Michael. We have a few requests and questions coming in wanting to know if this presentation will be available. Yes, it will be. About 2 weeks after this webinar, you all will receive an email with the webinar replay where you can view and rewatch this webinar on the ACEC RT website as well as the ACEC RT YouTube channel. And in that email will also be a link to the PDF version of this presentation, which you as well can print off and keep for yourself. We have just 2 more questions, and then we'll go ahead and stop it right there because we're coming up on our hour. So our next question, Michael, is if spouse collects early and I collect at retirement age or at 70, is spouse's amount recalculated?
If a spouse collects the benefits early or files to collect their own benefits early, there is a permanent reduction to that benefit. If you are filing for your own benefits later, if your spouse has a PIA less than 50% of your PIA, there could be an adjustment or an increase in benefits at the point you file. However, the piece based on the spouse's own PIA is permanently reduced. One of the scenarios you may want to think about, though, if you were 62 before the end of this year, is to consider, if your spouse is filed early and collecting a benefit, whether or not it makes sense for you to collect a spousal benefit on your spouse's work record and defer your own benefit until later, kind of flipping around what you might have thought to be your approach, taking advantage of the restricted application. Once again, you'll have to be currently 62 to be able to do that down the road.
And our last question, I was born in 1958. What would the calculation be?
Okay, you're born in, well, it depends upon the month you were born in 1958. 1958 is 4 years after 1954. So if you were born in February.
Sorry to interject, Michael.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you, but she was born in November.
She was born in November of 58, okay? You would look at, that is, 4 years after 1954, so your full retirement age would be 8 months after your 66th birthday. 2 months for every year your birth falls after 1954. 1958, 4 years after, 8 months later.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. We have no more questions at this time. So thank you again, Michael, for your assistance today and presenting to us. And thank you, attendees, for your participation. We look forward to our next webinar series with you taking place next month in December. And again, if you have any additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out to the Financial Wellness Help Center at that number that's featured on your screen, as well as the email address, financialwellness@acecrt.com. Thank you again, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.